It's been a minute since I've been on here, eh? Figured I just got back from Thor, and I've actually missed doing these lives, so I figured I'd do a little bit of a late night one. Um, we'll start off with just a non-spoiler review. Just go over the movie, my thoughts on it, and then a little bit later on, I will pop up the spoiler tag, and we'll go over spoilers. Um, I do have to find where the spoiler tag has went, however, because it has disappeared. But in the meantime, um, Thor: Love and Thunder. There's been a lot of I wouldn't mixed reviews. I would say there's been a lot of mixed reviews so far. Now, I can see why. I definitely understand why. However, that being said, I really enjoyed the movie. Um, we know that Thor has taken a bit of a turn since his original two movies. They were definitely more true to the character, I think, in terms of uh, just tone, right? They were a bit darker. They were definitely more of an action-based film. Um, those were great. Then we come to Ragnarok, the lighter tone, and we come to this, and it has the same type of comedy that Ragnarok did. It's very similar to, let's say, Guardians 1 or Guardians 2. Guardians Galaxy 2 dealt with a lot of, family trauma, emotional traumas. So this one does the same. And when we meet Thor in this, he's lost literally everyone. He's trying to find out who he is. He's still with the Guardians. Um, that's about it. Thor, he's not processed any of his loss. He's just sort of kept moving on, kept moving forward, and that's where we leave him at the end of Avengers Endgame as well. He just says he's going out to find himself, but again, he in the little synopsis in the beginning of the movie, it's actually by Korg. He even says that Thor just knows one thing, and that one thing is how to win a battle, because everything else he loses. So that's where we get Thor at this point. Not bad. Like fair enough. I get it. The dude lost most of his people, his into all of his family. He didn't have Jane. They had split prior to this. So uh, a good starting off point for a character. After seeing it, I've kind of thought that the first two Thor movies, if you combine them, they have a very similar feeling to, I would say, the original Star Wars trilogy, with Thor and Thor: The Dark World being A New Hope, Ragnarok being Empire Strikes Back, and this one being Return of the Jedi. More on even more similarities to that in the spoiler portion of the review. So, what did I think of the characters this time around? Obviously, we have a big lineup. We have Thor, we have Jane, Korg, Valkyrie, and that's our heroes. And it's a pretty well contained story. All the people get a fair amount of action, or a fair amount of screen time. And Gore, we'll talk more when I go into a bit more character review. Gore has done a really good job, or Christian Bale rather, has done a really good job as this character. And in a regard, sort of reminds me of Thanos. He has a purpose, he's made a promise, but for some reason, I feel like he has a better reason to want to do what he's out to do, kill all the gods, over Thanos just going, well, I'm just a really smart guy. The universe isn't going to last forever. I need to kill half the people. This one has a lot more heart behind it. So let's talk about Thor a bit more. So Thor himself, we talked about it a bit, how he's going through this emotional journey. He needs to learn how to deal with his trauma, with his losses, with his past. He's over 1,000 years old, but he just keeps moving forward onto the next fight, onto the next fight. And you know what? He's good at it, and that's why he does it. A really good arc overall for the film, where they leave him at the end. I wouldn't mind if they had just left Thor on his own. You know, all of the big Avengers have sort of gotten their ending through Avengers Endgame. Captain America saw his ending, and Iron Man saw his ending. It would be nice if they could have left Thor and had his ending. Not that he's to die or to live or whatever. It's just a good ending for the character. We don't really know if Chris Hemsworth's coming back to the role. However, he does seem to fairly enjoy it, and I think it would be a good bet that he would return. Then we have the new Thor, the mighty Thor, Jane Foster, and Natalie Portman has really knocked it out of the park with this one. I quite enjoyed her performance as Thor. Obviously, you know, she skipped out on the last Thor movie, and she hadn't been in anything prior. Thor referenced her, oh yeah, they broke up, whatever. They go over that, and they actually do a really good job of making her not just the damsel like he was, or she was, in the first two Thor movies. She's actually a fully fleshed out, proper character, and like in the comics, she's dealing with cancer. If you've ever had a family member or someone, you know, a friend, anyone you know go through cancer, they don't sugarcoat it in this. They really paint it as a really, really horrible disease. And it does weigh on her. And it's something that she's also avoiding, and something that across the film she'll have to come to terms with. And that's a theme that everyone in the film really has, is acceptance. Everyone's just sort of moving along, trying to find the next thing, when everyone is just trying to come to terms and accept that these are the things that are happening to them, and how to move on. And speaking of moving on, let's go to the next character here, which is Gore, the God Butcher. Really, really well done. Like I said, he reminds me of a character as like Thanos would be, but with a better reasoning. Not just, I have to do this. He has passion. He has heart. The film opens up with him and his daughter, and you know, as we know, his daughter dies, and that's what leads him on to this. The Necrosword calls to him, and he ends up finding it eventually. Really, really well done. He's a very, very scary villain. You very rarely see him in full light. He emerges from the shadows with the power of the Necrosword, and he's quite terrifying. If, like, truly, truly very creepy. His always has those glowing eyes, and most of the time you see those glowing eyes and his mouth movement. He has the hood up most of the time, and he's just in the shadows. He's a very, very good villain, and it would be great to see more of him. It's a character. Obviously, it does round out the story, and you know, Thor beats the, you know, he's the winner. He beats the villain. But I genuinely really, really enjoyed him as a villain. So that is what we've got here for the non-spoiler portion. Again, not a whole lot to spoil for this movie, but I don't want to ruin anybody's experience. So I'm going to throw up the spoiler tag here. There we are. And let's talk some spoilers. So, it looks as if the Council of the Gods, they go to the City of the Gods. I forget what they were calling it. But essentially, it's where all of the top gods go. We see some characters in there that are a little bit obscure. We see the Cronin god, who is Korg's god. We see some Celestials in there. We recently saw them, or a couple of them, in the Eternals movie. And we see what looks to be like almost a Chinese dragon, and that one looked really great. You see Bass, the panther god, And of course, there's Odin, not Odin, Zeus, and he's considered, the god. He's the king of the gods, and everyone thinks he's just the shit. They love him. Can't get enough. Thor goes to ask for help, and they're kind of, well, you know what? We're not going to do anything about it. He can't get here. And Thor calls him out. You're just scared. And he says, yeah, I'm scared. He's got the Necro sword. We're safe here. Why leave? So, battle ensues. They have a huge fight down there, and they end up killing a lot of the guards around there, which I think in any other time would be like almost an R-rated movie because of the blood. However, because they're gods, they have gold blood, so it just looks like gold paint spraying everywhere, which I think is a really cool way to get around it. And they're just covered in this gold blood afterwards. We see the return of what's her name, Lady Sif, and she's got a bit of a costume makeover. She looks very similar to her comic counterpart. There has the little headband, and like I said before, we do get a bit of some more backstory as to what happened with Thor and Jane and their breakup, and a lot of these moments are narrated by Korg, much like Louise did in the Ant-Man films, just not quite as rushed. I think the pacing of the film was great. Now, I did compare it to, in a sense, to Star Wars films, and it's because you're learning to embrace yourself. Gore has very much a redemption, like Darth Vader would at the end of the film. Not only that, but I do see why a bunch of people will not like the film. They do focus a lot on trauma and overcoming it. The Thor and Jane stuff feels a little bit forced in the beginning. It gets there. It feels more natural. I quite enjoyed the story by the end. But some parts do feel a little bit forced. Like towards the end when Thor imbues all the Asgardian children with temporary power of Thor. Neat scene, looks great, but I know people aren't gonna really go for that. It's just too cheesy, it's too cringy. Not the end of the world. I think it looked fine. But if you don't like Ewoks beating the Empire, you are not going to like kids beating Gore. But again, looks good. And that's another thing I want to touch on is the visuals. When we come to not the final fight, but a fight relatively close, just as the heroes, they have to catch their breath after. I guess the second encounter. They go to the Shadow Realm, and they're actually there fighting Gore. This is a really great fight scene. It has almost a Sin City vibe, where everything's just black and white, gray, no color, but the lightning, and if it gets bright enough, you do see the shade of red of the Thor's cape and Mighty Thor's cape. Gore's eyes are always piercing, always that orange color. It's great. I feel like I've said great a lot here. So, the introduction of the two goats, Tooth Grinder and Tooth Gnasher, hilarious. That little gift. Thanks for saving us. You smashed our temple. Take these really annoying goats. And Thor loves them. He thinks, yeah, they're great. Korg's like, oh yeah, real great goats. So, yeah, and Thor gets kicked out of the Guardians. Let's talk big stuff, though. We meet Eternity. Gore's whole mission is to get to the gates of Eternity and to be granted the one wish. Whoever finds Eternity first gets granted a wish, or their greatest desire. Gore's is to wipe out all the gods, because the gods didn't help him, they don't help anyone, they are selfish. We see that in the beginning of the film. He's the last of his people, and he finds his god, and he just laughs him off and says, I'll find new ones. And again, so what we see at the the city of the gods, and they're all like, we're fine, it's not our issue, there's always more disciples. So they're all very full of themselves, and Thor, in the beginning, in Thor 1, was very much like this. He felt very above, but through his journey, we see him transition into a more rounded, I was to say human being, but I guess he's technically an alien, an Asgardian. And he decides not to, or Gore decides not to wish for the death of the gods, but through seeing the sacrifice Thor is willing to make and the sacrifice that Jane makes as she lay dying due to her cancer, he sort of feels renewed in the sense that, he's pursuing this vengeance, but at what cost? He's almost creating the same situation, same pain that he felt. And he realizes this and wishes back his daughter. And that's where the film starts to end, is, Jane dies and she passes on, turns into the same godly golden particles, god dust, whatever you want to call it. Much like Odin did, much like a bunch of the fallen soldiers and the attack in Asgard and during Thor 2, that is. So, great movie. I really like it. I know a lot of people aren't going to like it, and I understand the points, but it is a really beautiful movie. They deal with some very deep topics. They deal with coming to terms with cancer, coming to terms with loss, coming to terms with grief. All very heavy subjects that I think are handled very, very well. They're not pushed in your face. Valkyrie, it's been talked about that she's been, the king of Asgard, and through that it was made, and directors have said, Kevin Feige has said that she's not straight. She is a gay character, or bisexual at the very least, if not gay. Cronins, when they mate, it turns out that they're also gay, sort of. So a lot of inclusivity, a lot of good tying threads in here. So that's it. That's Thor: Love and Thunder. That's the film. Now we get to the post credits. We see Zeus lying on in the city of the gods after Thor had, everyone assumed, killed him. Not sure if he's dying or if he's just heavily injured. We see he's being tended to. He's talking to someone off screen. And he says, "You know what? People don't call to the sky for the gods anymore. They don't pray for rain. They don't pray for our guidance. All they do is they look to the sky and call for their heroes." And he says, "I send you my son Hercules to kill Thor, Odin's son." And it pans over and we see a quick glimpse of Hercules. And he's played by Ted Lasso, I believe. Or maybe that's the character he plays in the show. I can't remember. But a character from, I believe, is called Ted Lasso. There's a show that he's actually a writer in as well and plays. But it's a very quick glimpse. You wouldn't know it unless you looked it up. I had to look it up after to see who it was. And then there's the second post-credit scene, which is a little less impactful, but still very nice. We see that Jane has actually gotten into Valhalla, and she's greeted by Heimdall, and he says, welcome to the home of the gods, the resting place of the gods, and here's Valhalla. So it was a very nice ending. There was a lot of very, very nice things in this movie. I have to say, for the runtime, it wasn't a long 3-hour movie, 4-hour movie, whatever. And it was pretty well self-contained. It doesn't reach too far into the further Marvel universe. Sure, we see Celestials. Sure, we see and have reference to other characters. The Guardians are there. They don't say, "Oh, we're off on our next mission." They're just like, "Hey, see ya, Thor. We're annoyed with you." and that's fine. I truly am quite fine with how it's ended. He's training Gore's daughter, who I don't believe he says her name. He just says "my love," and that's where we get the film's title. Korg's doing the final narration and says, "You may have heard of them. You may know who they are, but for the most part, they're known as Love and Thunder." And that's great. It's beautiful. I think it this version of Thor in the MCU has always had a different, very different story than in the comics, and that's okay. You have to make these adjustments. Some things don't translate well. People didn't like the first two Thor movies, especially the second. People don't like these new two, and in the end, whatever your taste is, that's it. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. I think it was pretty good. That's it. That is, remove our spoiler tag there. That's the review. That's it. I have a huge pile of books here, Star Wars books from the last few weeks. I might do a separate video. I won't do a live, but I'll probably do a video just doing some recaps on those. It's been a busy few weeks. So, yeah. Figured I'd pop on, say hi to everyone, do a quick little review, and yeah. So, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking it out. Let me know in the comments, have you seen the movie? Did you enjoy it? What are your thoughts? But please remember that no spoilers in the comments. We try to avoid spoilers for at least 2 weeks here on the channel and on the page. So if you want to discuss spoilers or anything, shoot me a message and we can talk about it. Until then, check out the charity art auction going on our page right now. It ends Sunday. I don't remember the exact time, but it ends this Sunday. And we have lots of art in there. There's some art by Casey Parsons. There's art donated by our artist Michael Berglund. There's Hugh Rookwood, Jason Flowers, Carl Waller. Lots of artists have donated, plus other art that is in the auction as well. So be sure to check that out. Thanks for checking us out, and see you guys all later on. Catch you later.